Oh, now we're on. Well, we were on, but now we're on again. So, and how are you again?
Good, thanks, John. Good again. Yourself?
I'm very well. We didn't get to me, so it was only how am I once, where it was how are you twice for Dan. Had some movement in the Big Bash League. Honestly, I think the Big Bash League is turning into the Big Joke League.
Yes.
So Brisbane Heat beat Sydney Thunder. I don't even know why we have two Sydney teams, actually. I didn't even realise there was the Sydney Thunder is the Western Sydney team.
It's sort of like part 2 of the Who Cares Cup, isn't it? We had the Australia-India T20 series that was meaningless, and the Big Bash is heading down the same path. But anyway, John, the Brisbane Heat winning by 20 runs on Tuesday night over the Thunder. 7 for 151 for the Heat. The Thunder all out for 131 in 19 overs. John didn't. There you go. Didn't bat out the 20. Wednesday night's game, the Scorchers won by 7 wickets with 37 balls to spare. As you mentioned just before we came on, John, the Stars rolled for 101. Pretty ordinary with the bat from them.
In 19 overs. So even
they didn't even bat out their overs.
If you see 101 score in T20, it's supposed to be because they were all out in 10 overs. Their run rate is not T20 level. That's a one-day international first 20 overs run rate or something like that. Even pretty poor for that. It's more like a test run rate.
100%. 3 for 102 for the Scorchers in reply. So they got the win there, John.
What? Oh, well, we're talking to producer John because we had some technical difficulties. Apologies for the mosquito that was flying around.
It's all right, John. If you're ever going to have technical difficulties, it's good to have it when you're talking about the Big Bash. I don't think many people. I don't think too many people care about it.
Losing interest anyway. So people were moving on. So now we can talk about technical difficulties. So that's the Big Bash. Who cares? Honestly, it's the nobody cares league. It's very sad. We talked about it at length on. When was it? Tuesday.
On Tuesday, yeah.
Yeah. Here's a stat for you. Colin Munro currently sits at the top of the run scorer for the Big Bash League at 145 with Steve Smith, who's only played one game at 61.
Yeah, there you go.
It's just missing stars, missing.
That's the thing, John. I'm just looking at your screen now. They're right there. That most runs. So you got Colin Munro at number 1 on that list. Then you got Steve Smith, Moses Enriques, Daniel Hughes, Hilton Cartwright, Will Sutherland, Jordan Silk and Jake Fraser McGurk are the leading run scorers in the Big Bash League. The only name that jumps out at you off the screen, John, is Steve Smith. Yeah. There's not one other name there, and I've just gone through 8 names. The top 8 run scorers in the league, and there's only one big name on the list, John. That really tells you the story, doesn't it?
It shows you the quality of cricket. Like it seems to be like a third-tier competition because, as I said, Steve Smith, he's only played one game and he's the second leading run scorer.
Yeah.
So, world-class player can enter into the Big Bash League, play one game and be second on the run scorer list.
Yeah.
When compared to everyone else, you've got teams getting out for 101 after 19 overs with terrible run rates. Yeah.
They've forgotten about what set them apart from being just a state competition in the first place, and that was getting the big stars playing, as we said, your Shane Warnes, your Ricky Pontings, your Adam Gilchrists. Without those players, it would never have got off the ground, the Big Bash.
Yeah.
And so in order for it to maintain its success, it needed to maintain the star power. So if we had Shane Warne and Ricky Ponting 11 or 12 years ago, we now need the likes of Virat Kohli, Ben Stokes, these global superstars.
Steve Smith to actually play.
Yes, Steve Smith to actually play. And without that, John, it's no surprise that the competition's just gone down the gurgler.
I'll see if I can get a quick look at the ratings. What is the viewership of the Big Bash League? Funnily enough, at the beginning of this year, it was really high. Like the last season, December 7th, 2023. Big Bash figures. So, of course, the news is the highest. Get out of my way. Pop up. Oh, 318,000 watched the Heat take on the Stars.
Is that nationwide ratings? Or
That's nationwide. Yeah, that's when you get 700,000 people who watch the news every day, and 318,000 for a 7:30 p.m. slot's not actually that bad. But then you swap up, so you can either watch. What was happening was people could choose to watch the cricket at 318,000 or go over to a current affair for 491,000 about Alan Jones. Yeah, and like even 7:30, ABC 7:30 got more viewers than the Big Bash League with 358,000. I'm happy to say the Project was the least watched show on the major TV networks with only 115,000.
Yeah.
But what it looks like is the Big Bash League was the third lowest watched thing out of everything at that time slot on December the 7th. So yeah, it used to be.
And I think that was the first game of the tournament too.
Yes.
So you'd expect a bit of a first game of the season, a bit of a spike there.
Yeah.
So you'd imagine the ratings for the games last night and the night before wouldn't have been the same as that.
Well, we'll see next week because the first couple of games you'll see people who aren't necessarily their fans just itching to get back into it. So the opening match of the NRL season is always the highest watched match of the round because they put on a big match and everyone wants to watch it because we've been missing Rugby League, but it looks like Big Bash League. So we'll see next week, actually. That's a good thing we can do a check on next week. Meanwhile, at 1:20 p.m. today, we've got the Australia versus Pakistan match starting. It will be broadcast on Fox Cricket, KO and Channel 7.
Yeah, so seeing as I say, John, we're recording this Thursday morning. The game's on Thursday afternoon, Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. So there's not really much point in us going into a detailed preview of it, John.
On Monday we'll give an update, but basically Australia is paying $1.26 with Pakistan paying $11. Yeah. Bet with your head not over it.
Yeah, I think
Don't be an idiot. Don't bet on Pakistan. Gamble responsibly.
Yeah, hopefully the game will be finished before our next podcast, John, and we can do a review of the game on. Monday will be day 5. But whether this game goes to day 5 is very questionable.
I don't expect so.
Especially if Australia bowl first. I can't see this one going to day 5, John. Australia will roll Pakistan and then make a big score with the bat.
Pakistan started the week at $6 and have blown out to $11. Yeah. So, whereas Australia has just stayed steady at like $1.20. Yeah, pointless game again. Who cares? But we'll see what happens when
at least Test cricket is back. It's day 1 of the Test summer, and that's Test cricket is real cricket. So they've got that back.
Apparently, just only named a squad for this match as well. They've not named like the rest of the even the second or third match squad. Like they've said this squad that's in first match is only for this.
I think maybe it's because there's a big gap between the first test and the second test. First test finishes on the 18th, and then the second test doesn't start until Boxing Day. So you got over a week between the first and second test.
To Candice Warner on the radio this morning, and she was saying that basically, the team is of the understanding that no one is safe. Anyone could be cut between the first test and the Boxing Day test.
That's all right. That's the way it should be.
Yeah, I think so. Especially given that the fact that Australia should just roll Pakistan for $1 million, and if anything, anyone goes badly, there's plenty of people who can step in and take the place, and it won't make that much of a difference. Usman Khawaja's gotten in trouble for this test. Continuing on for this test, he's been banned from making pro-Palestinian statement. It was. He's been in training with writing on his shoes about Free Palestine, and then he said he was going to wear it during the test, and he's been told, no, you will not do that.
Yeah, this is another example of, athletes just giving their opinion where it's just not needed, John. Why do people need to hear Usman Khawaja's view on the Israel-Palestine situation? It's a very sensitive situation. None of us like to see this sort of a conflict going on, but athletes, we talked about it the other day. You mentioned your daughter was watching the Taylor Swift documentary, and she said that She felt like she needed to get involved in the US presidential election and do something to stop Donald Trump. Why a singer thinks she should stop Donald Trump is beyond me, John.
Yeah.
And why Usman Khawaja,
a
cricketer, thinks that somehow he, of all people, can do anything about this Israel-Palestine conflict is just, to be honest, John, it's delusional, really, when you think about it.
I just seriously stay in your lane. Like, you don't need to be involved in political situations. Obviously, people have their opinions about Israel-Palestine. We're not going to get into that. All we're going to get into is the fact that Usman Khawaja shouldn't get into it.
No, well,
it's not his job.
We're on a sports podcast. Yeah. We're not about to give our views on a conflict going on the other side of the world. It's not our place to do that, and it's not Usman Khawaja's place either.
So that I skipped a few ahead because we were talking about the Pakistan-Australia test and trying to make the Pakistan-Australia test interesting.
Well, at least he's done that, John.
Brought some eyes to the... I'm sure the news reports were like, Usman Khawaja wants to do this, and everyone was like, wait, there's a Pakistan-Australia test? There's that. And then, the Dave Warner saga continues. Actually, basically, it's on the back of Mitchell Johnson's column. Now there are other media personalities and sources saying Dave Warner should be replaced as early as during this series and that he shouldn't have been picked for even this match that's starting today. They're all floating who he should... It's like I was saying here before, I think it's like a pack of seagulls around a hot ship. Everyone's weighing in on who should be the replacement. Everyone's weighing in on when he should be replaced. I know everybody's got to have their opinion, but this one's just gone overboard. The squad is named. He's playing. Why is anyone saying Dave Warner should be replaced now? The squad's named. He's playing. That's it.
I think what these critics are looking at, John, is they're looking at his recent statistics. He's averaged more than 29 in just one of his last 6 test series. And that's thanks to an epic 200 during last year's Boxing Day test. That's the only century he's scored in his past 9 series. And Warner's averaged just 22.8 across 9 tests this year and just 30.1 across 11 tests last year. That having been said, John, he was one of the star players at the recently completed Cricket World Cup. And I know it's a different form of the game, but that still carries some weight, John. The ODI World Cup is the biggest prize in cricket. The fact that he showed very strong form in that tournament would suggest that, I think he's deserving... Well, put it this way, I think he's deserving of his spot in the first test, but I actually like what they've done, only naming the squad for the first test. I'm prepared to give him the first test, see how he goes. If he has a double failure, then maybe you review it after the first test and you look at replacing him for the second test. That having been said, though, John, in order for him to be replaced, you need to have a viable alternative, which they do not have at the moment. Yeah. People keep talking about Marcus Harris replacing him. Marcus Harris's statistics in Test cricket are terrible, John.
Well, this is what I mean. It's like a flock of seagulls around a hot ship where no two media personalities seem to have the same opinion. They're all just... And that's why you shouldn't even be talking about it now till he retires, because there is no viable replacement.
Yeah, if you're going to say somebody should be dropped, that's fine. But you need to then say, well, who should replace them? And if you don't have that viable replacement, which they don't, well, then he keeps his spot. Again, I don't think he should... I'm with Mitchell Johnson in the sense that I don't think he should just be locked in for the 3 tests just because he said it's going to be his last series. No. But all things considered, I think he deserves his spot in the first test team. Let's see how he goes. Might have a great game, might not have such a good game. But let's give him that chance, see how he goes, and we'll revisit it after the first test.
The fact that there's no consensus who should replace him anyway should speak volumes to everyone talking about replacing. Every day, every hour basically right now, I'm seeing a new column, a new article, a new update, who should replace David Warner, when they should replace him, and every single hour it's like a completely different person. People are saying move someone up in the order. People are saying bring in people that haven't played Test cricket before. People are saying bring in guys who have played Test cricket but been dropped before, and so on and so forth. It just, if there's no consensus, then it just shows that there's no one.
And look, I'm not going to lie, John. These numbers in his last 2 years, they're not great.
Yeah.
As I said just before, averaged 22.8 across 9 tests in 2023, just 30.1 across 11 tests in 2022. Those are not great stats. Not going to lie. But, and if there was someone else bashing the door down to come in, well, then this conversation would be different, John, and maybe we would be saying, well, this player should go in instead of him. But there's just no one, John, and that the Marcus Harris name keeps getting thrown up. Did you want to just look it up there, John? Marcus Harris Test average. It's not great. I don't have it in front of me, but it's not
25.3.
And that's someone who's not a proven performer and who hasn't played many tests. An average of
25.3, and Dave Warner.
Dave Warner averages 44 over a long, 10 to 15 year Test career.
So Harris is also, we'll just say across how many tests he's played.
14 tests, 25 in 14 tests. So he's not a proven performer, and he's only played 14 tests and averages 25. David Warner is a proven performer and averages 44. So for anyone suggesting Harris should replace him, no, sorry, again, and there's no one else who really jumps out at you. I think there was some talk about Cameron Green maybe moving up the order.
I saw that one.
But, again, Cameron Green's never opened at Test level, so that's a high risk play.
I mean, he's got a 33.6 average as well. Like that's these guys aren't smashing out numbers.
And the other point to make is that they're not under a lot of pressure in this series, John.
Yeah, exactly.
It's highly likely that they're going to win this series 3-0. Something would have to go seriously wrong for Australia not to win this series 3-0. So they can afford to carry someone like a Warner if he is out of form, given that there are no obvious replacements.
Exactly.
So
I just can't understand why everyone's still going on about it. I know it's because of Mitchell Johnson's column, which we can move on to. It's Justin Langer's comments about Mitchell Johnson's column.
Yeah, so John, Justin Langer has weighed in, and he said he's not happy with Mitchell Johnson for writing this column, John. So Langer writing in his own column in the West Australian, which coincidentally is the same newspaper that the very famous Mitchell Johnson column appeared, John.
Makes for some uncomfortable time in the office.
I doubt they go into the office somehow. I highly doubt that. But anyway, so Langer said, in simple terms, I hate it when men from the rare club of playing cricket for Australia air any of their grievances publicly, he wrote. I believe in a simple ethos of praise in public, criticise in private. In other words, if you want to say something publicly, be positive and use the opportunity to praise the person you are talking about. In contrast, if you want to criticise someone, look them in the eye and tell them how you are feeling. John, if newspaper columnists just praised everybody all the time, it would not make for interesting reading at all.
No one's going to buy that.
As no one's going to buy it. No one would talk about it. The three of us in this room would never read that column, John. As I said before, part of the job of a newspaper columnist is to entertain the readers. And while you might not have liked Mitchell Johnson's column, John, he certainly did that. He ticked that box.
He was pretty funny.
The column was published nearly 2 weeks ago, and we're still talking about it.
I'm sure we'll still be talking about it right up until the end of the Test series.
This is what these ex-players lose sight of. They lose sight of the role of the media commentator, the newspaper columnist. Part of their job, a big part of their job, is to entertain their audience. And he says, they should just praise in public, criticise in private. No, if you're in the media, you give praise where it's due, criticism where it's due.
How is he supposed to criticise him in private anyway? Is he supposed to give him a call and say, "Hey, I got some criticism for you"?
Yeah.
What is the? That's also Justin Langer. You're criticising Mitchell Johnson in public.
And so he's doing what he says shouldn't be done. And John, this if Justin Langer's going to write a column where he just praises people all the time, none of us are going to read it, John.
Well,
and I know this might sound a bit close to the bone, but sometimes, again, John, I just can't help myself. John, I'd much rather read Mitchell Johnson's newspaper column than listen to Justin Langer as a commentator. Everyone you talk to who listen, and this is the thing, we've talked before about cricket. Cricket commentary matters a lot more than rugby league commentary, for example.
It's not play-by-play.
And it goes for so long, and there are dour parts of your day where you need to be entertained by the commentators. Everybody you talk to, John, says that they can't stand Justin Langer as a commentator. He's a terrible commentator. So he's not the person we should be taking advice on media performance from. As I said, I'd much rather read Mitchell Johnson's newspaper column than listen to Justin Langer as a TV commentator.
Yeah, me too. That's to criticise someone and say you shouldn't criticise someone is just hypocrisy.
And that's not personal, John. I'm just talking about his commentary ability. I'm not, it's not a personal attack on him.
It's hypocrisy to me. Don't criticise people in public. You're a terrible person if you criticise people in public. I say publicly.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on, man. Just I mean, I guess Justin Langer's just giving more reason for people to read the West Australian and go back and look and read Mitchell Johnson's column.
Yeah, just this idea that it should just be positive. That wouldn't sell any. No. That doesn't sell newspapers. John, who seriously? Who wants to read that? Seriously?
You got to be.
Let's write a column saying, this guy's a good player. This guy's a good bowler. This guy's a good batsman. Nobody wants to read that, John. That's not the world we live in.
You can write positive columns when something positive happens.
Yeah, I'm not saying it should all be negative. I'm saying give credit where it's due, give criticism where it's due. Be fair about it, but you can't just never criticise somebody.
The news in cricket at the time was Dave Warner announces his retirement. All right, that was the news in cricket at the time. There was no other news in cricket. We'd finished the Who Cares Cup. Australians had returned. There was Big Bash League starting. Dave Warner took the front and centre spotlight and said, I'm going to retire at the end of this test series. So people took that news and wrote their opinion on it. Some people had positive opinions. Some people, Mitchell Johnson had the most negative. Well, the funniest negative. So Mitchell Johnson is and the other thing is, the only reason Justin Langer is complaining about this is because Mitchell Johnson's column is the most famous, the one that's in the spotlight as well. Other people have written negative columns about Dave Warner and his retirement, but nobody cares because they just weren't as funny.
Yeah, ex-players like Langer, that they just think that, that they think that just because they used to play, that no matter what they say in a column, that everybody would want to read it because they used to play. No, it's not like that. You've got to entertain. That's what the ex-players don't get about the media. A lot of it's the entertainment business. You've got to entertain your readers. It's not good enough to just say, this player batted well on the weekend, or this player took a few wickets on the weekend. It's boring, John. No one wants to read that stuff. People want to be entertained. People enjoy controversy, John. They lap it up. Look at that video we put on YouTube, the most overrated player. That's one of our, I don't know exactly, I think that's one of our most viewed videos,
it is.
John.
Everybody watches it, man.
People love that stuff, John.
Yeah.
And then Justin Langer, further to that, he even brought Shane Warne's name into it, John. He said, it never made sense to me when our great mate Shane Warne publicly criticised Steve Waugh or John Buchanan. All three of these were my friends, and Warnie's view, while he had every right to share it, never sat easy with me. Now, John, I know that's he's not, I'm not saying that he's tearing strips off Shane Warne there. That's a considered criticism. But Shane Warne's not even here to defend himself against that, John.
You just say Shane Warne so you can... It's, to me, that's just... bring it in when we use hashtags like Taylor Swift. Say Shane Warne. So when people search for Shane Warne or they have a Google alert for Shane Warne, they'll get Justin Langer's column pop up. It's I think we talked about it last week where it's whenever anything happens, people will always compare them to the actual greats, and I'll say Michael Jordan, and so they'll bring Shane Warne and say Shane Warne's name just all the time as much as possible. It's an easy way to get reads, to be honest. So yeah, like I think that's all he's really doing there.
And just to finish on this, John, why does Mitchell Johnson need Justin Langer's approval to write a column? Justin Langer's not his newspaper editor. I mean, they write for the same paper.
Yeah, that's so funny that it's for the same paper.
But Justin Langer's not... Mitchell Johnson writes for a newspaper. He'd send his column to an editor. Justin Langer is not in charge of what Mitchell Johnson writes or doesn't write, John.
But as I said, it keeps the... I'm sure the editor looked at it and went perfect.
Oh, yeah, he would have loved it. Yeah.
And so just one more thing on cricket. Back to the Big Bash League. This just, again, speaks to the stupidity of Big Bash League. Pat Cummins has signed with the Sydney Thunder for this year now, after the Big Bash League has started. But as a supplemental player. This was trumpeted. It was a major news media release. So he can, in, air quotes, feature in the BBL season. That's not even news. That's stupid. They may as well sign, Conor McGregor. Yeah. If he's not going to actually play for you, then who cares? Yeah. Who cares if he's signed with you? They should sign Donald Trump. Yeah. Just sign anyone. It makes just as much sense, right? Imagine the news article then. He can play for us. It only means anything if he takes the field for them. Until he does, it's meaningless. Yeah. If I was a famous person, I'd be contacting Big Bash League teams and saying, "I'll sign as a supplemental player for you." Give you a bit of news reader. Don't have to play, do I? I'll just sign. Yeah. Like, come on. Yeah. So that's cricket for the week. Cricket. It's the summer of cricket, so we'll get more. We're onto a rugby league, and texted Dan yesterday and said, "Well, at least we know what we're talking about." Yeah. The West Tigers review came in, and something happened. So the West Tigers put our past half a year of podcasting and making fun of reviews to shame. When the review came in, it said the board should be sacked, so sack the board they did. Amazing, John. Whole board, everybody gone. Lee Hadjipentelis and Justin Pascoe gone. Lee Hadjipentelis was actually interviewed on SEN yesterday morning. It was yesterday it happened, right? Or the day before, whatever. In the morning of the day it happened, and he clearly had no indication of what was happening. And listen to the interview. It's still on the SEN website. It's also on the SmartB website. He's talking about 2024 season and how he expects the Tigers to win more games than they lose, and they're going to go really well, and everything's in place for Benji and all this kind of stuff. Like 6 hours later, I get an SMS. Like, what? Yeah. Come again? John, I reckon it's awesome, actually. I was just wondering how long that review took them. I mean, the review's pretty simple, John. You just go, right, only two finals appearances since winning the premiership in 2005. That was in 2010 and 11. 2 consecutive wooden spoons, 2022, 2023. And John, they've had 9 coaches since 2012. Tim Sheens finished in 2012. Then Mick Potter, Jason Taylor, Andrew Webster, Ivan Cleary, Michael Maguire, Brett Camorley, Ben Gardner. Brett Camorley? Back to I think he was just an interim. Oh, okay. Back to Sheens, and now Benji Marshall. So it's actually 10 coaches since 2012 if you count Sheens twice, given that he came back in 2023. So you look at that and go, well, if there's that many coaching changes in that short amount of time, maybe the coach is not the problem. Maybe we need to be looking at head office. There's your review done, John. Yeah. You look at that. That took me about, 2 minutes to go through all that. Review done. I don't know why you need to bring in a body to do a review. Well, the review was brought in because they weren't going to do a review. Yeah. It was brought in by fan petition that got like 3,000 signatures or something in one day. And so the owners of the Tigers, they were going to do nothing, actually. They opted to follow what the fans wanted to do. And then the review started we discussed it was in October. So October, November, a couple of months, where they obviously went and spoke to a whole bunch of people. Apparently they didn't speak to a lot of the board members, which is fair because the board, I guess they knew straight away. As you said, within 2 minutes, you know what the problem is. So what's the point in talking to the board members? The board was promised that they would see the review, and they haven't seen it. Lee Hadjipentelis has come out with scathing reviews of the process and stuff like that. He is currently still the major sponsor. Yes. And his contract is still until the end of next year. Mm-hmm. Apparently the board the new board has already approached new companies to take that place. Mm-hmm. Now, you don't know if it's because they think they don't want to be associated with Lee Hadjimentalus anymore, or because they think Lee Hadjimentalus won't continue in spite. Seems like a pretty spiteful guy to me based on the stuff he's saying. Barry O'Farrell's been appointed interim chairman. Yep. So everybody better watch out for their Grange. There'll be lots of gifts going his way. And then it was Shane Richardson, ex-Rabbitohs CEO.
Yeah. So, John, it's good news that Shane Richardson's come on board because he was Panthers CEO when they won the premiership in 2003 and the Rabbitohs CEO when they won the premiership in 2014. Yep. So he knows what success looks like. So good news that he's now on board.
And they're both interim, but you would expect that both of those appointments would be made permanent.
No, you certainly hope that Richardson comes on board because he knows what job he's got to do.
Look, these guys should understand. Of course they're going to come out. They've been sacked and be all angry and stuff like that. No, we didn't get to see the review because the review said you were the problem. That was why. It's so obvious that's why the review wasn't given to them. Because the review said... you only have one problem at the Tigers. You've got talent, you've got juniors, you've got a much-loved favourite son returning as a coach. You've gone through 10 coaches in 10 years. You've gone through 1 million players turnover. You've been having to pay overs for players, and players have walked out of their contracts. Coaches have walked out of their contracts. Everything has changed at your entire club except for the board. There's only one thing that hasn't changed in this period of continual failure. Everything that's changed isn't the problem.
You don't exactly have to be Einstein to work out what the problem was, John. And thankfully, they've finally addressed it. John, to me, that Hadjipentalus, the Bryden's Lawyers sponsorship, that felt like to me that was Hadjipentalus sort of holding a gun to the head of the Tigers. And they've just got to a point where they've gone, you know what? If you bail on us, we'll stuff you. We don't care anymore.
They'll find somebody, man.
Yeah, exactly. So good on them for going right. We're not going to be held to ransom.
Yeah.
And we're if we need to part ways with you, we will. And they had to take that step, John. Look, and thankfully they have.
Every Tigers fan I know celebrated because every Tigers fan knew that was the problem.
Yes. So they've taken step one in. That we talked about, John. I think we spoke during the year a few times about it, that they haven't even acted on their problem. Now they have acted on their problem. Yeah. So that's step one. But once you act on your problem, well, then you have to you have to implement the right solution to it. And that's going to be step two for the Tigers. And it's going to take a long time, but at least they've taken the first step.
All they have to do to have a successful year next year is not come last.
Yeah.
That's all they have to do. And I'm sure every West Tigers fan will be celebrating that. It was the same as Penrith, Parramatta, when they got 2 spoons in a row. All they had to do the next year was not come last. And they did that. And every Parramatta fan was like, I can see the future.
Yeah.
Like, we've got improvement.
Yeah. And there's no point in us saying, it might take 5 years. Well, we don't know how long it will take. It depends whether they make the right decisions now or not. If they make the right decisions now and continue to, they might be, another 5 years away from some success. But if they don't make the right decisions now, then it could be longer than that, John. But you think it's a minimum 5 years, 4 or 5 years away from really seeing improvement on the field?
Well, at least one more year until they get Jerome Luai. Because it's not like next year they have a...
Did you want to look up, John? I think I got paywalled out of reading this story, but I think I read somewhere that they pulled the offer to Luai.
No, I saw the same story, and when you get paywalled, go to Reddit, go to the subreddit, NRL,
or was it
someone
else?
will copy and paste the whole entire thing. Because there's a story that is so basically what it says. So we jumped to that. It's a few ahead in our run sheet. Anyway, so there's a story saying Tigers no longer want Luai because Justin Pascoe was. That's not what the story said, but that's what it sounds like from the headlines and the opening paragraphs. Because Justin Pascoe was so pivotal in getting Luai's interest.
Right, okay.
And so what it means now that Pascoe's out is the Tigers will change their mind and not want Luai. The quote from in that same story from Shane Richardson is like, No, we're still pursuing.
Okay, so
Luai.
they're still pursuing.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a non-story.
There's a whole bunch in that story and attached to it since this launch that have been like a bunch of clickbait. Like, one story was the Bulldogs are prepared to offer $5 million to Luai over 5 years. That was one of the latest stories, right? When you get through the paywall and go to the actual story, what it says is they asked the owner of Laundry Hose, Mr. Laundry, for a quote, and that's happened before where they've promoted that, like, what he says is gospel about the Bulldogs because he's a major sponsor. And he said something along the lines of, Luai would be good in any team and I'd love to see him in the Bulldogs, and, he's worth like $1 million a year. If they could tie him up for 5 years, they should. But it's up to Gus Gould and what the team is doing. But, the clickbait opening before you get behind the paywall is Bulldogs have offered $5 million to Luai for 5 years. It's just not true. And it's the same with West Tigers pulling their offer. West Tigers are no longer interested in Jerome Luai. Opening paragraph. Just since Justin Pascoe has left and Luai was only coming for Pascoe, they're not going to get him. Continue to read the story. Shane Richardson's quoted saying, "Yep, the offer's still there and we'd be happy. And we've already spoken to him." And Benji Marshall's saying, like, he's going there. Like, that's it. That's the thing. That's the end result. He's not going to stay at Penrith. So
you think Luai's going to the Tigers?
He's not staying at Penrith for $850,000 a year. Even if it's for 3 years, he's going to the Tigers for 1.1 or 1.3 or whatever it is, where he's going to be the number 7 and probably the captain.
Yeah, I've said it before, John. I think that the Bulldogs, someone at the Bulldogs is putting it out there in the media that they're interested in Luai to distract the media from who they're really interested in.
Yeah.
It happens a lot of the time. Give them this story so they don't pay attention to the real story. You get the feeling that's what's happening with the Bulldogs. They're using Luai to disguise who they're really going for.
Especially they do it to the Daily Telegraph, because Daily Telegraph updates its website and its news and tweets out stuff so much more often than any other media organisation. So
and I don't think the Bulldogs general manager, Mr. Gould, is too fond of the Daily Telegraph. I mean, they take a pot shot at him every second day, and they send photographers out, looking for him in the Chinese restaurant at Canterbury League. So I don't think he's got any issue with sending the Daily Telegraph down the wrong path.
On that as well, just continue on with the signing rumours. Fanua Blake is most likely going to the Saints. As I said before, Joey Manu was offered $4.5 million over 4 years to go to the Saints, but he's staying at the Roosters. It was meant to be announced a while ago, but there's been some delays, I guess, after internationals, Origin, and all this kind of other stuff. But Joey Manu is staying at the Roosters, and so that offer has been moved to Fanua Blake, $4.5 million over 4 years. Man, I would love to have a forward of Fanua Blake's calibre at the Dragons, but I still just can't trust the guy. Compassionate reasons.
And do they really want to take that risk, John? I mean,
they can't. Like, that's the thing. But new coach, new year. So maybe Flanagan can keep Fanua Blake in his 4 year. If anything, I would have given him like 2 years. Yeah, last 2 years anyway.
I just hope they persist. I just hope they don't panic if Flanagan doesn't get results in the first couple 100%. Of years. They need to just back him in and persist with him. Don't do what the West Tigers did with Michael Maguire.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, good. I just hope the Dragons don't make the same mistake as the Tigers made with Michael Maguire and panicked and sacked him. Because as it turned out with the Tigers, Michael Maguire obviously wasn't the problem there. We know what the problem, very clearly know what the problem was there. So the Dragons need to learn their lesson from that, and they need to persist with Flanagan, give him time, and trust that he will eventually deliver them results, which I think he will.
Definitely, I think so. Yeah. As long as they come high, like I've said before, as long as they go to that middle of the road next year, and then they can go for the step above, pushing for the 8 the next year, and then make the 8 the next year. They've got to at least give him 3 years to show growth. Same with... I keep saying, same with Cameron Serrato from this year. From this year, Bulldogs have to move to a middle-of-the-road team.
Yes.
Not fighting to avoid the wooden spoon, not necessarily fighting to get into the 8. 1 more year, fighting to get into the 8.
Yep.
Following year, a top 8 team.
Yeah, we can't have another year where the Bulldogs are in the bottom 4, John.
Yeah, they can't be.
This needs to be the last year.
Fighting to avoid the wooden spoon is no longer acceptable. Well, it's not acceptable for basically for the Tigers, Dragons, and Bulldogs anymore. With all these massive changes that have happened at both clubs, it's the first year of success. Like, this was their year where all three of them fighting for the wooden spoon. Next year is they can't be doing that. That's all. That's success from all three of them. We're no longer fighting for the wooden spoon. Yeah, we're on the 30 points just missing out on the 8, and we were never going to make the 8 is fine. You'd be happy with that as a fan of any of those clubs. We were never going to make the 8, but at least we weren't fighting to avoid the wooden spoon. Then the following year is last round. You'd be happy with the last round. Oh, this last game we might make the 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to feel that feeling again. Yeah,
2 years till that, and that's happiness for all those teams. So for all the crime around, what's it called? Crime Watch in the NRL.
Yeah.
Junior Ramon's been sentenced. Be
its own segment.
Yeah. Junior Ramon's been sentenced. So by no jail time, yeah. So.
Not for him. There was for his father, but not for him.
So on a good behaviour bond or whatever the hell it's called in today's day and age, every Dragons fan that I've seen on the internet wants him sacked. I'm in a middle of the road kind of situation there. Personally, as a Dragons fan, I'm in the middle of the road situation. I'm all for forgiveness, but he hasn't served his punishment yet. That's where I sit. Maybe he should be dropped, let go to serve his punishment, which is his good behaviour bond, to see if he can, get through that, and then he can come back to rugby league. I don't know. But
he was actually sentenced to a 2-year intensive corrections order, which is a term of imprisonment to be served in the community. So there you go, whatever that means, John.
Yeah, it's weird.
But yeah, I think, I'm no legal expert, John, but found guilty of arming yourself with a hammer and chasing a tradesman off a roof. I think you're doing pretty well to avoid jail for doing that, John.
And that's what I mean. I can see, every Dragons fan, there's not a single Dragons fan I've seen online who doesn't think he should be let go, and no team should be allowed to sign him. That's the consensus, fan consensus. I've seen people say he should just be let go because they don't want him at the Dragons and he can go to other clubs or whatever, go Super League, go work in a chicken shop, play for the Atherton Roosters. The extremes are he should just be banned for 2 years, right?
The 2-year intensive corrections
should be banned for 2 years from rugby league, and then be allowed to come back. That's kind of like the extreme. But then they all have a caveat at the end. Every Dragons fan, when they talk about it, is there's no one to replace him because we let everyone else go, because he's meant to play 5'8". But
but that's another matter, isn't it?
Kyle Flanagan's there for 5'8". And Ben Hunt in 7, although I wish Ben Hunt would play 9. I have had Ben Hunt update, actually. His attitude has slightly changed with what he's saying to the media about how he's actually really happy with the direction the club is going in the off-season. He's no longer ending every sentence, but I wish I was out of here, basically. And he's happy to be around for another year, and he's happy with the change in attitude around training and so on and so forth. Now, I know a lot of the Ben Hunt thing was based around Anthony Griffin being sacked, because Ben Hunt wanted a clause in his contract that if Griffin wasn't there, then he gets to go. As soon as Griffin was sacked at Ben Hunt, immediately went, I want to go too, and started looking for that release. But now he's kind of clarifying it as he was basically generally unhappy all around the club with the players' attitudes, with the commitment to training, with the commitment to even playing. And if you watch the Dragons, I always say they're individually brilliant. Every player individually brilliant. There's no team there. But he's talking more positively about the club. They can still let him go.
But this is the thing, John. They need to decide whether, as we say, I've said it many times on this podcast, he's the chief playmaker on, I think it's $1.1 million a season.
Yeah, 1.3 for his final year.
Yeah, well, we know it's over $1 million a season. He's the chief playmaker, and the team came second last this year. So they need to decide one or two things. Do they let him go and look to replace him as a solution, or do they persist with him and look to build around him? But the indications are that he's not your chief playmaker who's going to carry the team into the top 8. The indications are that. So then you go, well, if he's changing his mind and he wants to stay, do you even want him, John?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Seriously.
So, actually, Willie Mason made fun of the Newcastle spine, and the more I look at it, this is going to be the year Willie Mason makes fun of the Dragons spine. Because we don't have a confirmed fullback. There's a few players that are potentials. Like Cody Ramsey was meant to be the fullback before, but then was off with illness last year. Missed the whole year through illness. They said maybe Zach Lomax will move to fullback. I don't think he's a fullback. You've got in the halves, you've got Kyle Flanagan, Ben Hunt, Junior Amon, and that's it. And then at 9, they've played Moses Mbai there. They don't really have anybody. So they don't actually have a spine.
So I just got 2 questions about Ben Hunt, John. Number 1, how old is he? Number 2, how many years does he have left on his Dragons contract?
2 more years. So this year and next year.
Okay, so
for the contract.
So the contract runs out at the end of 2025.
Yep, and he's 33.
Okay, so if you decide to persist with him and build around him, by the time you do the building you need to do, it's probably going to take a couple of years, right? So by then he'd be 35.
He'd be retiring. So this is his last contract. So he wants to go back to Queensland for like 2 years and then retire.
Okay, well, so then why don't you just let him go now then, and look and try and just rebuild the team from scratch?
They can find someone else. I would like to see them move him to hooker and play a Nathan Feen type role when Nathan Feen was at the Dragons, who was brought there by Wayne Bennett to be a senior player who had transitioned to a different position. To give the rest of the spine a leader that could take over in bad times. So not be the main playmaker, be the hooker, have a main playmaker, but when things are going bad, Nathan Feen would take over. So he had Ben Hornby there, who was the captain. So it was Feen at 9, Hornby at 7, Soward at 6, and Boyd at 1. So you have 4 senior players there, right? But the thing was, Nathan Feen was there because he was not a premiership winner at the time, but a State of Origin winner. He was in the World Cup that won. He was I think the 7 for the World Cup that won for New Zealand. He'd won 4 nations. Like, he knew what it meant to be a winner, and he knew what to do in high pressure situations. He knew when to stay back and tell the guys to just let Jamie run this play and stuff like that. So I would hope that Ben Hunt has the maturity now to be that kind of player. Put him in 9 for the next couple of years to build up the Dragons into that top 8 team, and then let him go. But if he really wants to go now, let him go and buy someone else.
If you can find someone to pay enough of that $1 million a season plus salary that he's on, then I think you may as well let him go now. I mean, as we say, by the time they get the rebuilding done that they need to do, he'll be retired. Yeah. So there's just no point in that.
Yeah, the issue is there's nobody.
Yeah.
There's a lot of players off contract.
Like the David Warner replacement in the Australia, there's nobody to replace him.
There's a lot of players off contract, and it was Joey Manu, but as I said, it's pretty much confirmed he's staying at the Roosters. Jerome Luai for 2025. Even then, there's no spine players that you can build a team around available. And there's a few clubs in this kind of situation. That's why I'd say the Bulldogs are sticking with all their young guns, because there isn't anyone to buy that you can build a team around, except for Jerome Luai, actually.
So if Ben Hunt is on $1.1 million a year, how much, as a Dragons fan, how much would you need a rival club to cover of that 1.1 to make it worthwhile to let him go? How much would they need to cover? How much would you be willing to pay? As
a Dragons fan, $0 if he wants to go. We've had that conversation before where it's like, you want to go, you go.
Okay. So they need to cover that whole amount.
Line from Homicide: Life on the Street by the late great Andre Braugher, who died yesterday actually. When one of the other teams, his partner is complaining, and Andre Braugher's character says, "If you want to go, then go." And that's the thing. They should, but as a club, they could look at You look at someone like James Graham. It was the rumour of the Dragons only had to pay him $200,000, and the Bulldogs continued to pay him the other $600 or whatever it was when he was playing for the Dragons, and that's why he was let go. Because when he finished up with the Dragons, I don't know what I could ask him next time I see him, but the rumour was the Dragons were only paying him $200, Bulldogs were paying him $600. When his contract finished at the Dragons didn't have $800, so I was like, oh, retire now, brother. That was it. But that's the kind of thing that you would expect from. I would think that a lot of teams would look at Ben Hunt and see that kind of situation. Like, he's on his way out. He's never been a match winner. He's never been the kind of guy that will lead your team to the 8. So if we're going to take him, we're only going to be paying the $200. You guys are going to be paying the other $800, and that doesn't count towards the Dragons' cap. But that's what I would do as another team if I was going to take Ben Hunt. I'd make the Dragons pay $800,000 of the $1 million, and we'd only pay him $200,000. As a Dragons fan, I'd say if you want to go, then go. Like, zero. But no one's going to take him. That's the thing. Unless the Titans do. And the Titans would be foolish to take him as a game breaker. You can't build a team around him in 2 years.
The proof's in the pudding, John. He's not the chief playmaker who gets his team into the top 8, top 4. He's not that player. Some players are, some players are not, and he's not.
Yeah. That was the Junior Ramon sentencing.
We got a little bit off
Paul
track.
Kent's
yes, found not guilty of assault and choking a woman. John.
Once again showing that I am right, and he shouldn't have been sacked from anywhere.
So Paul Kent found not guilty of assaulting and choking a woman with whom he had an on and off relationship. Mr. Kent was stood down from his positions at the Daily Telegraph and Fox Sports while court proceedings were underway, John. So, we got this situation again, John, where somebody was, not able to work for... this happened in May, and he was charged in May, so he was not able to work for 7 months, John. Cast into the wilderness, and now... we haven't heard anything from his employers on whether he's going to be reinstated. It has only been a couple of days. They may just be waiting for the dust to settle a little bit before they make a decision one way or another, but he's been found not guilty. He should be reinstated into his jobs, John.
And none of the people, the social media warriors, keyboard warriors, are going to come out and go, you know what, I was wrong. None of them have said a reminder thingy that I've talked about before and said, come back in 6 months when Paul Kent's thing is, and so I can say, you know what, I was wrong. He shouldn't have been stood down.
And before the outcome of the court case, John, correct me if I'm wrong, but we actually said on this podcast, if he's found not guilty, he should be reinstated into his job. We said that even before this verdict. We're not just saying that now.
Yeah,
you can go back and
every
check.
time.
Yeah.
I've said before, I'm of the opinion nothing should happen. Like, from the employer.
He should just continue.
Yeah, until finish. If a person gets arrested and put in jail by the police with no bail, it's the justice system has determined that person is most likely guilty and a flight risk, and so therefore maybe the employer shouldn't continue to pay him because he's not able to work. He's in jail. Mm-hmm. If a person is charged and then said, he wasn't even out on bail. He was just charged, right? And then he was sacked from everywhere, stood down, sacked from everywhere. 7 months later, you know what? Not guilty. None of all of his employers and everybody on the internet and in the media that said anything bad about him need to apologise to him. And I will say again, he needs to go and apologise to everyone that he ever criticised and said that person should be stood down. Because he's pretty famous for being Junior Ramon should be stood down, blah, blah, blah. When it came to him, he didn't go, you know what, guys, I should be stood down.
And that's the thing, John. Yeah, we get it. He's not guilty. The process has determined that. But, he did come out after the court appearance the other day, John, and when he spoke, and he was quoted as saying... that something along the lines of he felt like some of his critics had used it as an opportunity. And you sort of go, well, mate,
that's what goes around comes around.
All right, you're not guilty, I get that. And you shouldn't have had to be stood down and not been able to work for 7 months, and you should have your jobs back now. But come on, mate.
Yeah,
like,
that's it.
Can you really blame those people under those circumstances for saying what they said, given what you've said about other people?
You know who you like, Paul Kent? You like Justin Langer. Like, that's the thing. Yeah, he should have from the very first day. To be honest, he should have from the very first day gone back through all of the times he's ever criticised someone and said they should be stood down, and apologised to that person.
Well, he certainly should do it now.
And said, now I know what it feels like. I should, because as I said, when it happened and he got charged, he didn't come out into his meeting and go, I should be stood down.
Yeah, of course,
yeah. But not guilty, should be given everything back, and everyone who criticised him should apologise to him.
Yeah, so we have not heard from his employers here, John.
No.
Haven't heard a peep. It has only been 2 days.
You know, he's not going to get his jobs back.
Are they just waiting for the dust to settle?
He's not going to get his jobs back because...
You don't think he will?
Keyboard warriors, social media warriors, social justice warriors, the PC police, they don't have forgiveness. So even if he's found not guilty of domestic violence, they will still think that he is. And so the internet will still continue to demand that he not have a job. They do it now to Jack DeBellin. And Jack DeBellin's situation is actually different because he had mistrial and then retrial and then mistrial again or something, right? So he was never technically found not guilty, but it was a situation in which they were never able to prove guilt, right? And so people still go on about how he's guilty. And I've talked about it before, that Brett Stewart situation. That guy was shown to have been scammed, you know? And people that I knew that had nothing to do with rugby league, their assertion afterwards, where I would go back to them after 6 months and he'd been found, like, not guilty, everything was a setup, like all these terrible things. It was actually like a thing on him that he should have sued, and he just went, no, I'll live well enough alone. Showed them the newspaper articles, and they'd say things like, yeah, but he's probably guilty of all these other things. You know, so I don't think Paul Kent will get much of his jobs back because the internet will still, if the Daily whoever he works for, I don't know who he works for.
Oh, the Daily Telegraph and Fox Sports.
Yes, if they give him his job back, there'll be an outcry. It's like, you're giving a wife beater his job back. It's like, no, he was not guilty of that. But
John, and I'm no legal expert, but if they don't give him his job back as a result of this, does that not make them in some trouble legally, given that they stood him down only because he was charged and then later found not guilty of those charges?
I don't know, but yeah, I would say so.
Wouldn't he have grounds for unfair
The danger of unfair dismissal is, especially for a public
because you need a job somewhere else, right?
That's always the danger.
Maybe he's just better off just... Yeah. And that's the thing, we don't even know, we should point out, we don't even know that he wants to come back.
Yeah.
He may have been put so off by his treatment from his employers that he may decide, you know what, I don't want to come and work for you again.
Exactly.
We don't know that.
But they should still offer. And, you know, Kenny, if you want a job, you can join us.
Yeah. Well, absolutely.
I'll squish over.
He can sit right here, sit between us.
He loves boxing and stuff as well, so it's good. So just one more news before we get to our favourite segment of the week. You know, the NRL's got a bunch of guys over in America right now promoting the Vegas thing. And the UFC and the NRL have announced a partnership to run some events in Vegas, having UFC fight nights and NRL games on the same weekends in the future. It'll be 2025 they're talking about. This is the first time, it's historic because it's actually the first time the UFC, who are a notoriously closed organisation, has partnered with another sporting organisation.
There you go, that's big
so
for
they
the NRL.
don't see the NRL as competition. You have Alex Volkanovski, who played for the something or other, the Gorillas, Goannas or something, I can't remember, it's like some lower grade squad, who is the current, oh man, I'm so bad, featherweight champion of the world, the GOAT, he's actually the GOAT. In that division. You have Tai Tuivasa, who played for Penrith, I think, and also the Roosters. You have Tyson Pedro, who I think may have played juniors. Tai Tuivasa's story is really funny because he was playing rugby league, I think, at the Roosters at the time. And I think he played first grade as well. And he was depressed and he hated it. And he was watching the UFC with Tyson Pedro, who's his brother-in-law or cousin or something, watching heavyweights, and Tyson Pedro said to him, "I reckon you could bash all these guys." And Tyson Vivasa said, "I reckon I could too," and decided to join MMA. So there are a lot of rugby league players, not a lot, but there are rugby league players. Robert Whittaker, who's the ex-middleweight champion. Like, I know I love UFC, but I don't know the weight classes. Ex-champion. He runs Gracie Humada Gym out at Smeaton Grange, and he's partnered with Penrith as their wrestling coach. A lot of rugby league crossover into the UFC, and now the actual UFC is doing a partnership. It's massive. It's a massive thing. Good for the
It's great. Yeah, the two sports, there's similarities between the two sports in terms of the brutality, John, and I think the two much like yourself, the two sports would have a lot of mutual supporters.
Absolutely.
So I think it's a very good partnership.
Now, ongoing with this, which I got only today as we were sitting, the promotion's going on, and some of the players that they've picked to promote the game in Vegas have been criticised. So one that's come under the major criticism from other players, current players, is Aaron Woods. So Aaron Woods is over there as a spokesman. He's talking about big hits and stuff like that. And so Brandon Smith, the big cheese, who, look, to be honest, if there was another current player in the league that annoys me most, that guy would be the guy, to be honest. He's had massive criticisms of Aaron Woods because they're playing things like when Aaron Woods talks about heavy hits, they're showing Aaron Woods hits. And Brandon Smith was on a podcast recently and said that guy's soft. And now they had the big four at the Tigers. That was Aaron Woods, Luke Brooks, James Tedesco, and the guy that's at Parramatta.
Sorry, Aaron Woods, Luke Brooks, James Tedesco, Mitchell Moses.
Yeah, that's the other one. Yeah. In the end, it was a big one. Only James Tedesco was really the thing. They tried to compare him to the Melbourne Big Four, but in the end, it was a big one. All right, and I think Aaron Woods was the least out of all of them. I always thought he was not that good a prop. He ran backwards into the line.
To be fair, I'd say that the two of the four have gone. I think Mitchell Moses.
He played Origin as well.
Yeah, Mitchell Moses is really good.
I'd give it a big 1.5.
I'd say I'll call it a big 2, John. I think Moses and Tedesco are the big 2.
I'll give Moses 0.5.
But Brooks and Woods
I tend to agree with Brandon Smith on this. That Aaron Woods is not the best guy to promote heavy hits and stuff. When he played for the Dragons, I hated it. He would run backwards into the line, chasing offloads that never came off, and he tends to lay down in tackles. This was highlighted to me years ago when he was at the Bulldogs for a while, right?
Very short. He was only at the Bulldogs for half a season, if you can believe it.
So when he was at the Bulldogs and we were watching I think it was a Roosters-Bulldogs game, one of my mates highlighted how Aaron Woods would always come late into a tackle, be the last to peel off, and often be laying in the ruck, meaning you couldn't have two markers. So he would open up, quick play the balls with a single marker, and that was his defence. And I was like, and then watched, and every time. So
put it this way, John. You remember you were talking about the other day we were doing our dream teams. I think Mark O'Mealy was one of the players who got a run in both our dream teams. And you remember when Mark O'Mealy ran over the top of Bryce Gibbs in that game and Willie Mason stood over him and said, get that into you. Put it this way, John, I don't think you'd ever see Aaron Woods running the way Mark O'Mealy ran at Bryce Gibbs that night.
Absolutely. And that's why, Brandon, the one time I've ever agreed with Brandon Smith, maybe Aaron Woods' highlights are not the best highlights to show big hits.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things what do they do? If he's the guy over there, they probably felt, we've got to show highlights of him. It's a tricky one.
Struggled to find some.
It's a tricky one, but maybe you don't have to show highlights of the person who's there. Maybe you just show the best vision you can find of any player. I'm not sure on that one.
There's 20,000 tickets sold, and we're still hoping to do a promotion as we're just having some new roadblocks every time. We are still hoping to do a promotion, but 20,000 tickets sold so far for that match in a 65,000 seat stadium. So it's looking like a good event.
Yeah, hopefully they can sell it out by the time the games come around.
March the 3rd. So on to, honestly, it's just our opinion, guys. We're back to the NRL, and Daniel's come up with a great question, this one, that actually did my head in a little bit. You want to...
Yeah, so John, I think what we'll do is... we're going to have a look at the coach, given that he's about to start his reign as Titans coach. I thought I'd do a question, let's have the Des Hasler debate. Is he a master coach or myth? And so I think, John, what we'll do is we'll start off with the case for him being a master coach. We'll start with that. So I'm happy to kick off here, John. So Hasler's only missed the finals 4 times in his coaching career, reaching the finals 14 times. Didn't coach in 2018 or 2023. Hasler coached teams, Manly and the Bulldogs, reached the finals in 12 straight seasons between 2005 and 2016. He coached Manly to premierships in 2008 and 2011. Coached teams to grand finals in 2007, losing to a cheating team that year, John, we should point out. 2012 and 2014, both of those at the Bulldogs. A total of 5 grand finals. Coached the Bulldogs to 2 grand finals in his first 3 seasons at the club. That's very impressive, John, to have that impact on a club right from the start. And also coached the Bulldogs to 5 straight finals appearances in his first 5 seasons there, between 2012 and 2016. The only year he missed the 8 at the Bulldogs was 2017, and that was his last year and he was gone. Coached Manly to 7 consecutive finals appearances between 2005 and 2011. The only year he missed the 8 in his first stint at Manly was in 2004, his first season as a coach. This is another good one, John. Hasler coached teams appeared in 5 grand finals in just 8 seasons between 2007 and 2014. Is there anything that you want to add for Hasler being a master case for him being a master coach?
So just some things, right? So his overall win percentage 56.3%. Mm-hmm. When you look at overall win percentages for most coaches, that's actually really, really good. It's hard for any coaches to have much higher than that. If we look to the extreme, who would you say is the best coach in the modern era? It's Craig Bellamy for sure.
Yes.
And his win percentage is, I looked this up last night and forgot to write it down, it's 69%. He currently sits at the highest, right?
Tell you what, is it? Can I throw something out there, John?
Yep.
Is the best coach Craig Bellamy or is the best coach Ivan Cleary now? Because Bellamy had 2 premierships stripped. Anyway, that's maybe a debate. Maybe that's a debate for another day, John.
Yeah, I think okay, so you can use Ivan Cleary as an example. His win percentage is 56%. Okay? Just quickly on that, to get the final word on that, I'd say it's Bellamy because he's had a better long-term record over Ivan Cleary.
Maybe that's another one of these debates we could have.
He also sat with 59% win rate with the Dogs, and it was kind of a bit weird when he was let go. Just because he missed the finals and then he was let go, right, with the Dogs.
Oh, Hasler, made 5 straight finals appearances between 12 and 16, missed in 17, was sacked.
Yeah. Even though he maintained a 59% win rate with the Dogs, which is higher than his overall. He had 56.1% win rate with Manly. And again, his sucking was strange. Which we'll get to, is he a myth? The reasons for his sucking is good. As I said, he's only missed the finals 4 times in 18 years, right? And then he did those finals with teams that were not the best in the league, actually, if you look at the teams that he had.
That's the other point to make, John. In 3 of the 4 seasons before Des Hasler got to the Bulldogs, they didn't make the top 8. Yeah. And in one of those seasons, they won the wooden spoon. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like he was walking into a team that he took over and made an instant impact on a team that wasn't making the finals.
Yeah, exactly. John. And it was the same with Manly. So when he went back to Manly, right, it was they'd missed the finals as well, and he walked in and took them straight into the finals, I believe.
Sorry. 2004 was his first season with Manly. Missed the 8 there.
So his second stint.
His second stint. Sorry.
Yeah, so I think in 2018.
So 2019 was his first year of his second stint at Manly.
And I'm pretty sure in 2018 Manly missed the 8. Let me just check and confirm that. Because it was 2s before that, right? So
actually, I've got that somewhere in my notes.
Yeah, they came 15th.
Yes, they did. They did miss the 8 in 2018. Yep.
And he walked in 2019.
Yeah.
And made the 8, right? Yes. Went to 6th.
Yeah.
Okay, and he won Best Coach of the Year because most improved.
Most improved.
He won Most Improved Coach of the Year. So you look at all of these things together, and then there was also the other period of time in which only 3 coaches won premierships. Between, I think it was 2006 when the Broncos won, and then it was Wayne Bennett, Des Hasler, and Craig Bellamy were the only ones who won premierships for a long... I think until 2013 when the Roosters won,
when
actually.
Robinson won it.
Against Manly. It was against Manly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Des Hasler was also in that. If Des Hasler had won that...
But he'd left Manly by then, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah. But, you know... Oh, yeah, that was the first time that we were finally going to see a different coach win, definitely. Yeah, even though it was a different team.
He was Manly coach.
Even though it was a different team, right? That was it. So between 2006...
Well, I get what you're saying. There was
2006 and 2012, only 3 coaches won premierships.
There was a long stretch where not many coaches were sharing the premierships.
And it was different teams. So Wayne Bennett gave you the different team, okay? So 2010, he went Broncos, Dragons. 2006 Broncos, 2010 Dragons. 2011 was...
Hasler
won.
2008 was Hasler.
Yeah.
2007 was Bellamy. 2009 was Bellamy.
Yeah, and 2012.
2012 was Bellamy.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
I think that's all those years.
That period of time gives you an indication that in a period of coaching in which the only super coaches in the competition were Wayne Bennett and Craig Bellamy, there was Des Hasler as well. Okay, in that period of time, there were no other... And Ivan Cleary was coaching then. Right, so you'd have to say if you've finished your world view at 2012, it's Des Hasler is one of the greatest coaches.
Yeah, so you're right. Yeah, so between 2006 and 2012, the only premiership winning coaches were Bennett, Hasler, and Bellamy.
Yeah. So moving on to the flip side.
The myth. There's always in a debate. There's always a flip side, John.
It's been 7. His last grand final appearance was 2014.
Yes.
Okay. And this speaks to Wayne Bennett as well. Because Wayne Bennett's last premiership was 2010. Mm-hmm. So in an era...
within one play in 2015, but yeah.
In an era of super coaches from 2006 to 2012, there's been a change. Okay. And so now we have Des Hasler. Last grand final was 2014. Mm-hmm. He's had 7 coaching years since then. So it's not like he's been out of the game. 7 coaching. He missed 2018, 2023. Every club that he's coached at has had salary cap issues.
Yes.
And he has embedded this culture in Manly. Wow, the light just changed. I guess the storms are coming.
Like disco lights.
I guess the storms are coming, guys. That he's embedded that culture at Manly, and it's pretty well publicised that he embedded that culture at the Bulldogs, and that's been the major hurdle to the Bulldogs moving forwards. And they've been trumpeting it out every year, but last year was finally the final time, apparently.
Yeah, so you talk about these back-ending these contracts when he left clubs, so I've got some notes on it. So he back-ended contracts in both his first stint at Manly and his stint at the Bulldogs. It didn't hit Manly straight away. You touched on it before. They made the prelim in 2012, which was the year after he left, grand final in 2013, and the finals again in 2014 in the 3 years after Hasler left. But then his back-ended contracts hit them, John. They missed the finals in 2015, 2016 and 2018, playing in just one finals game in 4 seasons. That was in 2017. The back-ended contracts have had a devastating effect on the Bulldogs, John. They haven't reached the final since 2016 when Hasler was at the club. That shocking run they've had included a wooden spoon in 2021. Since then, they have not recovered, and he left 6 years ago, John. Also, John, you touched on his second stint at Manly between 2019 and 2022. I think that barely earned him a pass mark, John, which shows his best days might be behind him as a coach. In 4 seasons, he reached the finals twice, but missed them twice and didn't reach a grand final in that second stint at Manly. One thing I need to add, John, about how he left Manly the second time. Manly didn't win another game after the Pride jersey debacle of 2022 and missed the finals. It led to Hasler sacking. He took the club to court over his sacking and wasn't happy with their handling of that matter, but nothing was said about Hasler's inability to get his players to refocus after the debacle. A lot was made of the club mishandling the situation, but nothing was said about Hasler being unable to unite the team again after that, John. That's part of the job of a coach, to unite a team amid a crisis, even if the crisis wasn't caused by the coach. He seemed more interested in playing the blame game and pointing the finger at the Manly hierarchy than reviving his team's season. That counts against him, in my view.
Yeah,
John.
I think what... obviously, it's his time is over from being a master coach, okay? But I think what he tends to do... I think he actually has the ability to be a great coach. He does. You can see it in when he comes into the Bulldogs. Doesn't sign a whole bunch of players or anything like that. Has a pretty average team and makes the finals. Did the same for Manly, right? He went from 16th to 6th. He's won the Most Improved Coach award. Technically, it's Dally M Coach of the Year, but for the rest of my life, I'm calling it the Dally M Most Improved Coach of the Year. But then what he does is he buys a premiership. Actually, he buys grand final appearances for cheap with back-ended contracts.
And he leaves the club. He leaves in a massive hole. But he gets
sacked. That's the thing, though. He gets sacked every time. Has he ever left the club without getting sacked? He got sacked from Manly, and that was... So I mentioned, we'll touch on it later, because this is one of the things about him as well. The reason he got sacked from Manly was because he won a premiership in 2011. Mm-hmm. Signed for the Bulldogs to start in 2013.
Yes, and it got pushed.
And then it got pushed forward because he got sacked 2 weeks after the grand final. You know, because when he signed with the Bulldogs, he went around to players and staff and stuff like that and said, "Come with me to the Bulldogs," right? He actually did this. That's why he got sacked, because so he stopped concentrating even on Manly for 2012 and went straight to the Bulldogs 2013, the second he signed with the Bulldogs. Then he went to the Bulldogs. And he got sacked from there. Why did he get sacked from there? He missed the finals. It was a little bit weird at the time. I don't know why he got sacked from there, but he got sacked from there. Then he went back to Manly, and he got sacked from there. So he hasn't had... I think what's happened in the time between when he last appeared in a grand final, he hasn't had time to buy a premiership. And that's why my conclusion is actually he's always been a myth. I think even though he was able to get those 2 premierships, lose 3 grand finals, which 5 appearances for a coach is a lot.
In 8 seasons, yeah.
And even though he was in that super coach period where there was only 3 super coaches in the league, only 3 coaches capable of winning premierships, one of them bought a premiership. One of them bought premierships, and that's Des Hasler. One of them, Craig Bellamy, built premierships continually. Yes, cheated. Apparently wasn't involved in the cheating, and it's not his fault. Yes, cheated, but since then has gone on to win premierships.
He has. Bellamy has won. He won the premiership in 2012 and 2020 after all the salary cap fallout had occurred.
The other one, Wayne Bennett, who has forever been highly criticised about winning premierships in Brisbane, in all of his early premierships being unfair teams and all that kind of stuff. The 2006 Broncos team was amazing. But they beat a 2006... Who they beat in the final?
Melbourne, yeah.
Melbourne, right? A 2006 Melbourne team that was amazing.
And the team that was found to be over the salary cap.
So Wayne Bennett beat the cheaty team, right? Without buying a premiership. 2010, yes, Wayne Bennett recruited a bunch of players, but he didn't buy superstars. He bought guys like Jamie Soward, who are notorious for being too good for Premier League, not good enough for first grade. Jamie Soward in the Premier League, there was something where he played for the Newtown New Jets and outscored every other team for the year. Something weird like that. Went to the first grade and got dropped 55 times. Okay, but Wayne Bennett made him good enough. He brought guys like... So what Wayne Bennett can do that made him a super coach is... He was able to buy players strategically, like I talked about earlier. Nathan Feen for a specific purpose to fix Jamie Soward. Wendell Saylor was there. He didn't get to win a premiership, but he came there to make sure Jamie Soward didn't go into his shell. They built a team around Jamie Soward and won a premiership on the back of tactics. Mm-hmm. But Des Hasler buys premierships. He buys players that shouldn't be able to play for him because he buys them on such cheap amounts, by giving them back-ended contracts where they go from, like Anthony Watmoe, I think was a massive one. It was something like he was on $300,000 a year, and then after Desi left, he was on $800,000 a year.
Yeah. I mean, John, you talk about how he abruptly left Manly after that 2011 premiership, and it came as a shock to everybody, and he joined the Bulldogs a year earlier than he was supposed to in 2012. But maybe that's why, John, it didn't hit Manly straight away, because he'd planned for the few years after, because he thought he was still going to be there. Certainly for at least one of the years. So, as we said, it didn't hit Manly straight away. They still had very good sides in 12, 13 and 14. It was 2015 when it really hit them.
Yeah.
The other point to make on what you said before about why was he sacked from the Bulldogs, it's true, he only missed the finals once in 2017 and then he went. But I think a main problem with it wasn't... They obviously made that grand final in 2014 and lost to Souths. But it was the way they were playing in 15 and 16, John. Like they just looked. You couldn't believe that they made the finals in those 2 years. The way they just looked terrible. They were such a clunky side, and you could see that they were just getting progressively worse in 15 and 16, and then 17 when they've actually missed the 8 after those 2 years of not playing well, but somehow still making the finals in 15 and 16. The Bulldogs just pulled the trigger and went, righto, this is only going one way. So I know looking at that on the surface, it looks like, oh, geez, they acted pretty quickly on him, but we should point out that they didn't look good the way they were playing for 3 years before they got rid of him. So we should point that out, John, even though, the Bulldogs have been a basket case since he left. But in summary, John, I guess any debate has to have a concluding statement, right? Yeah. So I would say, and I don't want to be seen as being a fence-sitter, John, but I would say that I think that his record indicates that he was a master coach. Was is the key word. But his recent stint at Manly indicates that he's done, and I wouldn't have signed him as Titans coach. I think he's done. I don't think I would have given him another gig. That having been said, John, I put a big caveat on that, in that we still have Ricky Stewart, who has a coaching gig, and he has not won a premiership for 21 years. And I have to put that caveat in there, John, because if Ricky Stewart can still get a coaching gig somewhere, then absolutely Des Hasler should, although I wouldn't sign him. That's my summation, John, if that's a fair one.
Yeah, my summation is he's actually always been a myth who just bought premierships.
That's all right. We can agree to disagree on that.
I think even during that era when he was, like I said, one of the only three coaches that could win a premiership, he was the only one that bought the premierships as opposed to building teams to win premierships. Yes, Craig Bellamy cheated, but Craig Bellamy has since gone on to show that it was still no fluke. He's built players.
Yeah, as I said, I think he escaped a lot of the heat and again, I know the Pride jersey saga wasn't Des Hasler's fault. He had nothing to do with it. But it was his job to get the team to rebound after it, and he didn't do it, John. And I think he escaped a lot of the heat on that. The heat all went on the Manly hierarchy, some heat should have, but Hasler needed to pick them up again after that, and he didn't, John.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so on to AFL. There's not much news in AFL right now.
Just one story at the moment for the AFL, John. Really devastating news for superstar Bailey Smith of the Western Bulldogs. He suffered an ACL injury at training on Wednesday, John, and he's set to miss the entire 2024 season. It's such a cruel blow, isn't it?
It is.
He's out of contract at the end of next year, and he's been linked to a move away from the Bulldogs. He left the training track midway through the session. Scans confirm the extent of the injury to his knee, so he could have played his last game for the Bulldogs, John, given that he's off contract at the end of 2024, and he's now going to be most likely sitting out the whole 2024 season.
Oh, that's sad.
That's just terrible news, John. It's just very sad.
It's very sad.
Very sad. I mean, he is only 23. We hope he can bounce back.
But ACL is a hard one.
Yeah,
it's a really difficult one. And, the main thing with ACL injuries and things like that is it's the mind. The injury you'll come back from, but then it's a human function to be able to walk. And when you have an ACL injury, you can't walk properly. So then that's always playing in the back of your mind. You see players talk about it like back, and then they go for their first hit out, and there's any tweak on their knee, they're just like, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to lose the ability to walk again.
Yeah, and that's far more important than coming back and playing football.
Exactly.
Yeah. Terrible news on Bailey Smith there. We hope he recovers as soon as possible, John.
Yeah. So, Combat Sports, UFC 296 is this week. I talked about it before. There are so many fights on it. It's worth watching from the moment it starts. I think it's an 8 a.m. card for the prelim. I'm just going to touch on 4 fights. So, the first one is the headliner, Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. Colby Covington is the ultimate heel. He's a fun guy to watch. There's actually a press conference tomorrow that's going to feature Colby Covington, Ian Machado, Gary, and a bunch of the funniest people in UFC. It's going to be everybody's talking about there's a lot of people who have fights on Sunday, but their actual fight is on Friday. With what Colby Covington's going to say about them. Leon Edwards, as he won the premiership, the belt against Kamaru Usman, who's one of the GOATs, and has beaten him again since. Colby Covington's fought for the belt twice and lost. So it's going to be an interesting fight. They reckon that Colby will wrestle Leon over. Shavkat Rakhmonov, I can never get his name, he's Kazakhstani, versus Stephen Thompson's, so Stephen Thompson, he pulled out of his fight against Michel Pereira because Michel Pereira missed weight by heaps, by 7 pounds or something, and then didn't get paid. And a lot of people reckon that this is his punishment. He has to fight the boogeyman Shavkat, who's 17-0. Who is again just going to apparently, but
it's not a bad record. John, the 17-0.
He's the division He's the division boogeyman. So El Quiqui, Tony Ferguson is making a return now. Tony Ferguson, the famous thing is he was meant to fight Khabib, and they got cancelled 5 times through various reasons, missed weight cuts, freak injuries. Tony was previously on a 13-fight win streak and is currently on a 7-fight losing streak. He's a fan favourite. Everyone just wants to see him win one more time, then retire. Just win one more time. And he's fighting Paddy the Baddie, who everyone used to love, but then Paddy Pimblett said some controversial stuff and racist stuff. And so now everyone hates him, and so everyone wants Tony Ferguson to beat the crap out of him. And just the last one, Casey O'Neill is an Aussie. So she was on an 8-fight win streak before going up against Jennifer Mayer, who was a previous title challenger. Everyone saw that as if she beats Jennifer Mayer, then Casey O'Neill will get to fight for the title. And unfortunately, she lost. So this is her return. That was in March this year. She's got to fight a couple more times while the title is currently on hold, with Alexander Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko going back and forth about it. And then she's going to fight Lipsky, who's been around for she started in 2013. She's been around for 10 years. She's 29 years old, probably on her way out, and so it's a good fight for Casey O'Neill to get back to form. As I said, it's a great card. Every single fight's going to be awesome. I'll be waking up watching it from 8 a.m. and then cleaning my house around watching it. I'm not going anywhere on Sunday. I've blocked the whole day to basically do stuff at home and watch the UFC.
Yeah, awesome.
Can't wait for... Come on, Tony Ferguson.
Sounds like a good card, John.
Please win, Tony Ferguson. Please. Everybody's praying for you, my friend. But there's tennis news.
Yes, there is, John.
There's always tennis news these days.
Yes, getting closer and closer to the Australian Open, John. Anyway, Novak Djokovic, he's been brutally snubbed by tennis fans for the 2023 Fans' Favourite Singles Player Award, John. He's been beaten out by young Italian Yannick Sinner for the award. This award had been won by either Roger Federer or Rafael Nadal since 2003, John, and people thought that given Federer's retired and that Nadal barely played at all this year, that it would be Djokovic's time to take the honour. But no, Sinner's beat him to the award, John.
It's always going to happen if it's voted by the fans.
Yeah, Djokovic, he just can't seem to earn that love of the fans that Federer and Nadal have earned, John. So, while he, has won the most majors now, he certainly isn't winning the popularity contest, that's for sure.
I saw an interview with him about how he wished he was friends with Federer and Nadal, like Federer and Nadal are friends. He wished those three could be friends and that they could go out for dinners and stuff like that, because Nadal and Federer, when they first started, kind of hated each other. And
as you would, right?
Yeah. And then they repaired that relationship and became great. Apparently, Rafael Nadal was the second person that Roger Federer told he was retiring. You know, but yeah, they've never gotten along with Djokovic. And I think it's just because they see him as not a good representative for the gentleman's game of tennis.
Yeah, I mean, it is when you've got, you know, and you had three players who were so dominant for so long, it is going to be hard for them to be, you know, close friends. They're your rivals, you know. That's just human nature. There's going to be strained relationships there. So it is sort of amazing that Federer and Nadal have that very close relationship. But Djokovic just can't seem to get on that same level of those two in that regard. The regard of being well liked by the fans and, you know, being friends with his close rivals.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Djokovic has just got to accept it. As I said before, he just needs to look at it and go, well, this is not a popularity contest. I'm winning on the stats sheets. I'm winning in every. And he's winning this three-way battle by every measure now, yeah. John. Nobody can take that away from him, even if he's not winning the popularity contest. And as I've said before, John, if it was me, I'd much rather win on the stats sheet than win the popularity contest. And that's how Djokovic needs to view it. He needs to stop caring so much. I think the reason it cuts so deep with him is he cares too much, yeah, John. He just shouldn't care about this sort of stuff.
Conor McGregor, brother.
Yeah,
Conor McGregor.
100%.
And
speaking of people who don't care that much, nickkyrgios.
I saw this quote and I was just like, come on, dude.
He said, I only want to play for 1 or 2 more years. I'm tired of playing tennis. You know, John, why, given his lack of motivation for coming back or for playing in general, why even bother with the 1 or 2 years? Just end it now. If by the time it's going to take him ages to rebuild his ranking anyway. I mean, I know he'll get wild cards into whatever event he wants to go in, but that just sounds like a lot of effort for not much reward for somebody who struggles for motivation at the best of times, John. Let alone coming back off such a long injury layoff. Surely his best option now is just to pull the pin now, John, and be done with playing tennis.
I think so. It just seemed like a little bit weird that he's come out and said it. Play for 1 or 2 more years when? He's not playing Australian Open.
Yeah.
When is this 1 or 2 years going to start?
Yeah. And you need a lot more than 1 or 2 years to build it into anything meaningful.
Exactly.
So what's the point?
It's just a weird thing. Just go to commentary, kiss some makeup with Leighton Hewitt and fix the Davis Cup. That's it, man. That'll be the greatest thing ever.
Done deal.
Yeah, and so Netflix has now branched into sport.
Yeah, John. So it's announced that it's going to live stream a tennis match between Rafael Nadal and Carlos Alcaraz on March 3. The streaming giant confirmed the Netflix slam on the back of its success with the celebrity golf tournament Full Swing in November. So there you go. The Nadal and Alcaraz match is the latest sporting event to be announced by the streaming juggernaut. The match will be hosted by MGM Resorts International. Will begin at noon at the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. So there you go, John. Just looking at your facial expression, you don't seem too thrilled by the idea.
Yeah, no. I don't want Netflix getting involved in sport and live streaming anything. I want sport to be on free-to-air TV. All sport to be on free-to-air TV, except for major pay-per-view events. Even those I'd like to be on free-to-air TV. I understand in boxing and MMA and other combat sports, the money is actually in pay-per-views. It's how you build up hype and stuff like that. But in tennis, the money isn't in pay-per-views. They're basically converting tennis to a pay-per-view. You know, and also it's Nadal and Alcaraz. Like, what? Isn't Alcaraz Djokovic the match we all want to see?
Yeah, I'm guessing they just probably couldn't get it to happen, John. But it's going to be streamed on the platform as a dual broadcast in English and Spanish. Yeah, John, I mean, at least it is only an exhibition match. It's not like they've signed on to broadcast the Australian Open or
But still, that's why it's a pay-per-view. They created a pay-per-view in tennis. You're going to have to subscribe to Netflix to do it. And I mean, it's only, I don't know how much Netflix is now. I've never subscribed to Netflix. because I don't have sport until now. So I mean, like, I don't subscribe to Netflix because I don't have sport. I only do subscriptions for sport. And no, this is awful. I don't want to add another one. It's a road that we don't want to see travelled when Netflix becomes a sporting thing, and then you have to have Amazon Prime for cricket, Paramount Plus for whatever's on Paramount Plus. It stands sport for rugby.
Channel 31 community TV.
I hate it. I really, really hate it. I'm so sad.
It's going to be interesting to see how that one plays out, John.
In other sports news...
Yeah, so... apparently, John...
this is weird.
do you want me to...
Yeah, go.
Do you want me to go through it? Or
go through it.
Yeah, okay,
No.
So... Just to explain it, John, so... Gary Lyon is now engaged to be married to Billy Brownless's ex-wife.
It's weird, man.
Yeah, it is. I'll just explain it a bit more, John.
Go for it. No, I want the news story is like we got to talk about it, but it's like oh.
Yeah. Well, so you mean weird as in
it seems kind of incestuous.
The circumstances. Yeah. So. So John, the reason I put this down, I was a big fan of the AFL footy show in my sort of late teens, early 20s years, where I didn't have much going on, and it was always on late at night after the NRL. It'd come on straight after the NRL footy show, and so I'd always watch it, and you'd have Gary Lyon and James Brayshaw, or Eddie Maguire hosted, and then Gary Lyon and James Brayshaw took over. And Billy Brownless was always a regular panellist on the show, and I'd love watching Sam Newman on that show as well. Great TV performer. But yeah, then we had this situation where in 2016, Gary Lyon had to leave the program because it had come out that he was now seeing Billy Brownless's ex-wife, Nikki Brownless, and that was sort of seen as the downfall of the footy show, John. That was the beginning of the end for the footy show.
Yeah.
I think, James Brayshaw took over the hosting after that on his own, and it wasn't the same without Gary. And then Eddie Maguire came back and hosted it for a couple of years at the end, and it just never got off the ground again, and that was the end of it. So, yeah, John, it was just... I don't know. We don't know all the circumstances here, John. This is people's personal lives we're talking
incestuous.
about. But it's just like Billy Brownless can't be happy with this development, John. There's no way. And I did some reading about it, and apparently Brownless's children they seem okay with it, and Gary and Billy have gone to family gatherings together, and now seem to have or Billy certainly seems to have accepted the situation. I mean, I highly doubt he's happy about it, but he seems to have come to accept it. But yeah, I just think, John, it's just that to marry your I don't know if they were best mates, but they were definitely mates. To marry your mate's ex-wife, it's pretty ordinary, John. We got to say, like, it's something that I wouldn't do. Put it that way.
It's so weird.
Surely it's a no-go zone, John.
Just on that, I think the failure of the footy show, people blamed this, but like.
Do you think it was heading that way anyway?
Yeah, I think the AFL footy show died at around the same time as the NRL footy show. Neither of them exist anymore. And I think it's more to do with the fact that these sporting organisations and the players in them and the ex-players and the current players are still so backwards in their progressive attitudes, their comedy and how they behave, that the PC police and social justice warriors and woke mob were never going to... As the fans get younger... and newer, and to the newer generations, they were never going to invest in these like guys dressing up as girls and stuff like that. And they saw it as insulting, and so they just tuned out.
It was never going to survive this PC era that we're living in.
I think that was more it, but they just looked for reasons like this at the time. But really,
maybe this accelerated it, but it was heading that way anyway.
Because like I said, at the same time as the AFL one died, the NRL one died. And that had nothing to do with Gary Lyon or Billy Brownless.
Yeah. But it just, I'd take your point, John. You make a good point, but like that's the thing. I really like Gary on the show, John. I grew to like him.
Yeah.
And so you just, and I know we don't know these people personally, but you just you just sort of look at it and you go...
I just cringe. That's why I'm cringing.
Because you got to go... I mean, again, we don't know all the ins and outs of it, John. We're only being given surface-level details here of what's going on. But, it's just... Like, Gary's got to consider the feelings of other people too. Like, how's Billy supposed to be feeling about this news? And I know there's reports that the kids were okay with it, but if the kids have grown up with, and Gary's one of Billy's mates, and they see him, and then Gary turns around and marries their mum, the kids can't be happy about that, John. No, like, seriously, you got to consider the feelings of other people sometimes, and how are the kids supposed to feel about that? How's Billy supposed to feel about that, John? Deep down, surely they can't feel good about this.
It's just bizarre.
I know it sounds a bit tabloid, John, but
no, it's just cringy. That's why I'm cringing.
I just put it in there because I was a big fan of the show.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those stories where you go, what, really? Like, seriously?
Yeah, exactly. Last other news, sporting news, the secret that everybody knew existed, Eddie Jones signed with Red Japan on a 4-year deal.
Oh, yeah, that's not exactly the most earth-shattering news, is it, John?
Press conference in Japan this morning. It's probably already happened. Everybody knew that was going to happen.
Yeah, no surprise, John.
Eddie Jones is also labelled on Triple M this morning as the #1 villain of 2023. Is
that right?
Yeah.
So he beat... I'm trying to think who would the other candidates be.
It had two others, and I didn't even remember who they were. One was, I think, Dan Andrews. It was Alan Joyce. Ruining Qantas, and the Optus CEO. I'm pretty sure that were the other two.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that seems like an appropriate trio.
Eddie Jones won though. We didn't have any social media comments this week. I'm a little bit since the other day, 2 days ago. I'm a bit sad with that, but that's okay. We'll post some other videos and we'll get some more hate. We did actually have one, which I'm not going to repeat because that guy's an idiot. So you're an idiot and you know who you are.
Oh, was it something?
It was way too obnoxious and rude, so delete. Other than that, we didn't have any good ones to engage with.
Hopefully the Des Hasler one will...
might promote that directly to Manly fans.
Yeah, hopefully that will bring in some comments, John.
So just for the housekeeping, don't forget to sign up for the tip of the day. Sign up to SmartB and get a daily tip. We've had a couple of losers, I'm going to be honest, but we expect them to bounce back soon. I'm still up. Bet with your head not over at free and confidential sport. Take gamblinghelponline.org. Copper box competition still ongoing. Sign up to SmartB for cricket, rugby league, or basketball to win a corporate box with you and 17 mates. If you're a fan of combat sports, sign up and select combat sports or Subversion as your referrer to win 2 tickets to Subversion. It's in April. It's actually been announced April. There's apparently some really, really good fights on it. I was offered a fill-in fight, but the guy was way too light for me. And then follow SmartB app on all of your socials, all of your YouTubes. Like and subscribe. So next week is our last 2 for the year. And then we'll be going on a 2-week break because we all need breaks. And then we'll be back in the New Year's with some exciting things actually coming.
Awesome, John. Sounds good, mate. Have a good weekend. Enjoy the Australia-Pakistan test, and we'll see you on Monday.
Yeah, I'm going to put it on in the office, actually, at 1:20 p.m. All right, see you Monday. Bye, Producer John.
Bye.
Love the shirt, by the way.